one of the reasons that we all need to stand up for our country is because we're such a divided nation. And it really hurts me as an American who loves my country. I'd love to see us all on the same, I hate to use the cliche, page, but I'd really like to see a lot of common ground among all Americans. It's not happening. So think back 20 years ago, September 11th, all right? And what happened? Well, we got blown up, actually 19 years ago, by Al-Qaeda. And that brought most Americans together. You know, we had to right that wrong, and we got behind the new president, George Bush the Younger, and we did accomplish our goal. We did knock out the jihad. We did it, all right, with the help of other nations, but it was us. But that unification, that fell apart once the Iraq war went south. So in the beginning, it was all right. The USA and the coalition invaded Iraq to remove Saddam Hussein, who was not cooperating with UN weapons inspectors, and we thought had weapons of mass destruction that he might use. So once the Iraq campaign went south, then the country fractured again against conservative, liberal, Republican, Democrat, and on and on and on and on. Okay. So President Bush the Younger got reelected because John Kerry was a pretty bad candidate. Nobody trusted him. And then Barack Obama came in and defeated John McCain. All the while, the country was divided. We did not unite behind Barack Obama. He said he would unite the country, but he didn't. Although he was reelected, as Bush the Younger was. He beat Mitt Romney, another weak candidate. Romney could not articulate why he would be better for the country. And he could have easily because the economy was still terrible. But anyway, divide, 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 divide. And now we're at the breaking point. That's how bad it is here. So you see the forces. It's obvious what is happening. But with the killing of George Floyd, that ripped off any kind of civility. So now it's destroy America. We have to destroy this country. And you have the media, academia, colleges, all of that on the destroy America side. And then you have traditional conservative Americans on, wait a minute. We believe the country's noble, and we believe that this nation offers more opportunity than any other nation on earth, which is true. That is true. So why do we want to blow it up because of slavery or some historical injustice? It doesn't make any sense. Now, sense is not what's in play here, though. So I was talking with a very intelligent liberal woman a few days ago, and I don't do this often off media, so I'll obviously interview anybody on TV, but in my private life, I really don't do this much, but there was an occasion where I was in her proximity, and she was giving me the America's a white supremacist nation kind of line, which I looked at her and I said, well, I don't believe that, and most Americans don't believe that. All right, so you may believe it, and under our Constitution, you have a right to believe it, but it isn't a fact. And to present it as a fact is fallacious. I was using big words because she was very smart. So she said, well, you're just discounting slavery and Jim Crow. And I said, I'm not discounting anything, madam. I love that word, madam. I submit to you that every single nation in the world has a historical injustice, and more than a few. So by your calculation, if America has to be remade because of slavery, which is what the New York Times is saying, then Germany, the Soviet Union, China, every other country would have to be remade. And reparations wouldn't just have to be paid to African Americans, but every minority, including me. Now her eyes get wide. I said, my ancestors lost their land in County Cavan, Ireland. It was seized by the British Crown. And when the British Crown seized the 2 acres that my poor ancestors farmed, the father had a heart attack and the mother was left with 2 16-year-old boys who she couldn't feed. So she put them on a coffin ship where they worked their way across the Atlantic, throwing bodies into the Atlantic Ocean, and landed in Brooklyn. That's how my side, the O'Reilly side, started. So I'm entitled to reparations from the British government, am I not? Silence. And I said, look, the bottom line on this is you don't hold a country accountable for historical injustice. It's not fair to the present citizens. It's not fair to take my hard-earned money and give it to anyone because of what happened 200 years ago. That's ridiculous. So I think I won the argument because she had no comeback. Not that I cared about winning the argument, I didn't. But I fervently believe what I just told you. Now, the reason there's so much division in the country is money. That's why. It all has to do with money. Slavery had to do with money, and on up. So the media companies run by the big corporations, AT&T, Disney, Comcast, all of these people, they want to make money. That's what they want. They don't care about anything else. Nothing matters but money. Because the chieftains only keep their positions if the profits continue to rise. And one way they make money is by selling hatred toward Barack Obama or Donald Trump or anybody. You can make money, easy money, doing that. And they do. I mean, CNN is a joke as far as a news organization is concerned. And just today there was an analysis of the Washington Post's reportage of President Trump's speech in South Dakota at Mount Rushmore. And the guy who did the analysis, and you can read it on realclearpolitics.com, runs down lie after lie after lie after lie after lie. I'm sorry, it was in the Wall Street Journal today. Hallman. The Washington Post just lied, just about the speech. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's staggering. You sit there, they usually try to fake it, fake news. They usually try to, this was just outright falsehoods. The Washington Post? It's run by a guy named Marty Barron, who is about as dishonest an individual in journalism as I've ever seen. Used to be the editor of the Boston Globe. All right? Now, are they worse than the New York Times? No, the New York Times is the worst. The New York Times puts out this 1619 thing, which basically says America, the whole country is founded on slavery. It's just a lie. It's a foolish lie. But anyway, the media divides. It's not divide and conquer, it's divide and profit. And they make a bloody fortune by doing this. Look, when I started at Fox News 24 years ago, we didn't know whether we were going to be successful or not. Ted Turner, the owner of CNN, basically said, I'm going to squash those people like a bug. And the mandate was to be fair and balanced. The strategy was conservative and traditional Americans have no voice in the media, which they didn't. And we'll give them a voice. And therefore, people were hired who were deemed fair, like me. All right, you may not like me, but I'm fair. And so that presentation made a lot of money, but it wasn't based on hate. Now, what they do now, I don't know. Been out of there 3.5 years. I don't know and I don't care what they do. I don't. All right, I have friends over there and I hope they do well. But the others, including the network news, was stunned when Fox News rose up and dominated. And they said, well, we have to have a new strategy now. We have to hate the opposition. And since Fox has all the traditional conservatives watching, we got to go the other way, which they did. In the beginning, MSNBC wasn't a liberal network. And CNN wasn't nearly what it is today. And the network news was always left, but not crazy left. And now you know what it is. You can't turn on that channel and think you're getting any reliable, honest information. If you watch those concerns, you can. But they are profiting. They are making money off the hatred. A program like The View 20 years ago could never have been on the air. Barbara Walters started that, and while it always tilted left, it was entertaining. I went on it many times, as you know. Now it's a hate fest. That's what they do. They hate Trump. Every day, all day, that's it. Only 2.5 million people watch it, but it makes money, and Disney cashes the check. Boom, boom. Disney knows what it is. They know. They don't care. Now, when you get all of that hatred coming out, and it's on talk radio too, all right? You know, all of it, just every day, well, it's going to seep into the culture. And it has. And we're divided now. And under Donald Trump, who is polarizing himself, this division has reached almost violent levels. It has reached violent levels on the far left. They justify burning things down and hurting people and looting and all of that. They justify it. You don't hear condemnation of looters on MSNBC or CNN or in the New York Times. If you do, send it to me. I'd like to see it. I didn't see it, and I'm pretty well informed. After playing sports for decades, I have some pain. I'm an old guy, all right? So I talked with Dr. McQuillan from Omega XL. She said, whether it's painful back, knees, neck, shoulders, the underlying cause is likely inflammation. I believe that. Backed by 35 years of clinical research, Omega XL attacks the inflammation that's causing my pain. The doctor said something else very interesting, quote, I can't write any prescription that comes close to Omega XL. Order Omega XL and get a second bottle free. Visit OmegaXL.com. That's easy. /no spin. OmegaXL.com /no spin or call 1-800-844-4888. Now let's go even further left. You know Congresswoman Omar, right? Somali woman, came over with her family in 1995, is a congresswoman from Minnesota. All right, so Omar is a communist. She's not a socialist. And she wants to break down everything in America, not just capitalism, but the whole society. Roll tape.
As long as our economy and political systems prioritize profit without considering who is profiting, who is being shut out, we will perpetuate this inequality. So we cannot stop at criminal justice system. We must begin the work of dismantling the whole system of oppression wherever we find it.
That's Lenin, all right? That's Stalin right there. That's what they said. So I'm going to say that she may have plagiarized that from Lenin and Stalin. That's Fidel. Okay, she's entitled to her opinion. The morons in Minnesota who voted for her can't explain it. And she would just rip up the whole country. But get this. Miss Omar is married to a guy named Tim Mynett, M-Y-N-E-T-T, who runs a consulting firm in Washington, D.C. Miss Omar has taken her campaign donations, there's Mynett, has taken $878,000 of her campaign donations and gave it to her husband for consulting. $878,000. So this communist thing, I don't know if this is working in private. You know what I'm talking about? Now, who benefits from the $878,000? I believe Congressman Omar, she's married to the guy. Now, it's not illegal. If you're a senator or a congressperson, you can't give money to your spouse. You can't hire them to work in your office, but you can, if they have a private business, give money to their business. It's legal. So I thought you'd want to know about Congressman Omar. Now, have you heard that story reported anywhere? You're not going to hear it on CNN, New York Times, Washington Post. Well, I shouldn't say that. Maybe they'll run something on page 56, but I doubt it. Many of us are worried that our 401ks and retirement savings, everything we worked for over a lifetime, could evaporate. With all the fake news, it's important to have an independent expert in our corner to preserve and grow our savings. It's simple. So please meet Silicon Valley angel investor and 5G expert Jeff Brown of Brownstone Research, whose only obligation is to us, to you. His newsletter, The Near Future Report, shares his analysis on where the stock market is going and when, which stocks are poised to rise and fall, and new ways to profit from the exploding tech market. His track record is amazing, so please go to bill5g.com. It's easy, bill5g.com. You will thank me. Now, stay with me here because it's a little complicated but important. Now, first of all, the President of the United States has been put off balance. So you may have noticed it. Donald Trump has lost a little of his swagger. He's always been a guy that struck back against things he didn't think were fair, but now he's doing more of that. And on the COVID thing, he's frustrated. And that's the truth. I know it personally. So Donald Trump is used to, if you read my book, The United States of Trump, controlling everything in his world. And he did that for the first 3 years of his presidency. He was in charge, he controlled. The pandemic comes in, he can't control it. And the American people are scared, many of them. And when people are frightened, they look to the government or their dad or their business, whatever it may, to protect them. But nobody can protect us from COVID. It's unique in that. So you can't send in the army or the police. There's nothing you can do. And of course, the anti-Trump press blames President Trump for the pandemic, for the contagion. Now, that's not fair. It's not true. Maybe he could have done things better. But think about this. The president has kept the economy and the markets, particularly the stock market, fairly stable. I think that's a pretty good accomplishment in the middle of a pandemic. Now, I'm not trying to promote Donald Trump. I'm trying to inject a bit of fairness here. So if you want to think that President Trump has booted it on COVID, that's your opinion. You're entitled to it. But the fact is that Donald Trump has been worn down. Put yourself in his shoes. Just 6 months ago, he thought he had re-election like that. He had a booming economy running against a weak opponent. Okay? Trump thought he was just going to skate right on in there. And then wham, this happens. He's frustrated. And we'll get into that in a little while. Now, I've said if the schools don't open in the fall, Trump loses. And I'm sticking to that, which is why there's so much urgency on the part of the federal government to get these schools open. We'll get into specifics on the schools in a little while. The next thing is that there is a radical left movement. And you all know it. I mean, we've been going over it and over it and over it. But that is being obscured by COVID. Because instead of reporting honestly on the radical left movement, the networks and a lot of the cables just do COVID all day. And they ignore the danger, and I mean that literally, from Marxist groups and anarchists. I mean, they ignore it. They're not going to report it. We do. But we look for pickup. Got a little bit of it on the Black Lives Matter Global Foundation. We got it out there. But it wasn't easy. And finally, many of you voters in America are absolutely clueless. A, they're panicked over COVID. B, they don't pay attention. C, it's all about them, not about the country. And so you've got a big cadre of voters who, well, on Thursday they're going to vote for Biden, but maybe not on Saturday, Trump. They're back and forth. They swing, which is why you see the polls, which don't mean anything now. And finally, the backlash against the radical left and against the anti-police movement has been delayed because of COVID. If there was no COVID, these people could never get away with what they're trying to pull. I mean, when you're seeing hundreds of people shot in major cities across the country, and networks ignore it. Mostly ignore it. If there wasn't any COVID, they couldn't do that.
If you are over the age of 50, I have an important message for you. There's a true alternative to AARP, the liberal retirement group that lobbies in favor of progressive policies. For less than $20 a year, an AMAC membership gives you members-only pricing on car insurance, roadside assistance, discounts on hotels and travel, cell phone plans, discount dental plans, and on and on and on and on. So please join more than 1 million fellow Americans right now at amac.us. And yes, I am a member. Visit amac.us, amac.us.
Bernie Sanders, the big star in the Democratic Party these days. Roll it.
Under this administration, authoritarianism has taken root in our country. I and my family, and many of yours, know the insidious way authoritarianism destroys democracy, decency, and humanity. As long as I am here, I will work with progressives, with moderates, and yes, with conservatives to preserve this nation from a threat that so many of our heroes fought and died to defeat.
Authoritarianism, word of the day. As an American now, I'm stepping out of my journalism analysis shoes, and I'm an American. I got to tell you, in my life, for what I do, where I go, I haven't seen one shred of authoritarianism from the federal government since Donald Trump has been elected. Nothing. Now, Bernie, maybe in Vermont, somebody came up to him and said, hey, you can't do that, or you must do this, or we'll punish you. But I don't think so. So here's the real authoritarianism. That word stems from people having power. People who are elected in this country, people who seize power in other countries. But in this country, people who are elected, we give them power over us. The police have power over us. The district attorneys, the mayors, the governors, the senators, the president, and the congresspeople. They have power. They're in authority. When you abuse that power, overstep your mandate, that's authoritarianism. That's what Sanders says that Trump is doing in his whole administration. Back it up with nothing. Got nothing. But I can back up the real authoritarianism going on in this country right now. Remember St. Patrick's Cathedral, where the vandals wrote F you and Black Lives Matter on the front of the church? Well, that was captured on videotape. And those vandals were arrested by the police. And the case went to the district attorney, Cy Vance. And Cy Vance said, you know what? I'm not prosecuting. Wait, that's a crime. You have the evidence on videotape. The police made the arrests. Cy Vance said, I'm not prosecuting. I don't care what they did. That's authoritarianism. He's the authority. You can't bring a case unless Cy Vance signs off on it. He won't prosecute. That's authoritarianism. The same thing in Chicago. Kim Foxx drops 75% of all felonies taken to her by the Chicago police. She drops 75% of the cases. That's authoritarianism. That's not what she was voted in to do. Or Vance. Same thing in Portland, Seattle, Minneapolis, Baltimore, Washington, D.C., on and on and on. That is authoritarianism, because you and me, we can't do anything about it. So if somebody punches me in the face and the police arrest the guy for assault and the DA won't prosecute, Where are my rights? Where are the rights of the parishioners of St. Patrick's Cathedral? They have no rights? That's authoritarianism. And that's all on the far left. Now, that's way too complicated for Bernie Sanders to understand. He's not smart enough to understand it. But you are. Let's bring in my pal, Adam Carolla, who is on the West Coast. He's got a brand new book out called I'm Your Emotional Support Animal, Navigating Our All Woke, No Joke Culture. All right, Carolla, where am I going wrong, man?
I agree with 99% of what you said, and I sort of was listening to the monologue and thinking of it this way, because I'm from California. I grew up in LA. I started to notice a few years ago that the government and the legislator basically broke up Los Angeles into one of two groups. There were the groups who paid their taxes and had a checking account, and they became enemy number one. They had a target on their back. And then there became everyone else who was here illegally or homeless or couldn't pay whatever stiff fines they levied against them, and they left them alone. So they essentially declared war on people that have checking accounts, and anyone who was an empty bag, they left them alone. That's why we have the homeless population. And I can distill it down to one street in Los Angeles. I used to take this to get to my studio to do my podcast every day. There's one street, it's called Forest Lawn Drive. It runs along Forest Lawn, the cemetery. On one side of the street, there are a bunch of people that are here illegally without a permit, selling flowers at cut rate prices. And by the way, undercutting the legitimate florists and businesses that are nearby. $10, you can get as many flowers as you want. That's on one side of the street. Throwing the trash on the ground, making a mess, boxes that the flowers came in, just an eyesore of a mess. On the other side of the street, there is a motorcycle cop. He sits up the driveway in the Jewish part of the cemetery. He has a radar gun because it's a long stretch of highway and people tend to speed on that stretch of highway. He then pulls over soccer moms and taxpayers and citizens who are doing nothing but taking care of their family, raising their kids, and driving 7 miles an hour faster than the posted speed limit and writing them a ticket. The illegal activity that's going on the other side of the street is neither here nor there because those people don't have checking accounts. That now is going on in full scale throughout this country.
How did it get so bad? That's a question that many, many people ask me. How did it get so bad so fast?
Because anyone who spoke up was quickly called a racist or xenophobic or bigoted or homophobic. And so all the people that wanted to just get along and not get clobbered on the Twitter sphere and on the internet, whatever it is, all the nice people sort of wanted to kind of go, I just don't want any trouble. I know it because I sat next to Dr. Drew for many, many years, and he was a good example of a good man, a family man, a taxpayer, but he didn't really want any trouble. And so he would sort of dance around, you know, when these moments came up where people needed to speak out and say, enough is enough, this is insane. Many people were silenced, and they were silenced because they didn't want to be labeled by the mob as being prejudiced or homophobic or xenophobic, anything. They didn't want it. So they did. So all the moderate sort of in between people that knew it was wrong just sort of looked the other way and kept walking. Now, a few of us, guys like me and guys like you, we spoke our minds, and you pay the consequences for speaking your mind in the society. So a lot of good people who knew the difference between right and wrong remained silent, not because they were bad people, because they were cowards. They're scared. That's the number one quality that people possess.
There's another element to that. I agree with you that a lot of people are just frightened. And that's why I've launched this campaign, because, and I want you on your podcast to get involved with this campaign, Carolla. All it says is stand up for your country. That's it. No politics involved, no party, no liberal conservative, nothing like that. And if you can't say in America, stand up for your country, if you're afraid to say that, you need to move to Costa Rica. All right? So I'm starting this campaign, and already we have millions of people engaged in it. And after your podcast, we'll have 10 million, Carolla. You got to get on board here. But the media, which should be challenging the destruction we are seeing in Chicago, Los Angeles, San Francisco, New York City, it should be saying, what the deuce is going on? How can you say defund the police when your murder rate's up 100%? How can you possibly do that? The media doesn't do any of that. Any of it. They're on the side of the Marxists, of the anarchists, of the Antifas. They say they're not, but they don't investigate. They don't do anything. And God help you if you're opposed, as you just said. That media come crushing down on you. And that is why this has accelerated, in my opinion, so quickly.
Well, there's a few components here. One is, I think the media has bought the narrative that Trump is Hitlerian and is going to destroy the country, perhaps the world. So once that's your sort of baseline, your jumping off point, then really anything you do to get rid of the next Hitler is all fair in love and war. So there's
okay.
Yeah,
right.
There's that. So morally, you can say what you want, you can lie, you can tilt the story, you can do whatever you want because it's in service of the greater good, which is getting rid of, Hitler's younger brother.
Absolutely.
So that's.
But it was before Trump. This happened in the Obama administration. All right. Now, the Obama administration for 8 years. Did the Obama administration improve race relations, Carolla? In 8 years, did it?
I'll tell you what happened, in my opinion, with the Obama administration. When we elected our first black president, and keep in mind, you and me, our whole life, that was the benchmark for this country having great race relations. I mean, that was the finish line. If we could elect a black president, imagine what a utopia in terms of race this country would be in. And for many years, that was sort of the term we use. Like, once we get to the point where we have our first black president, then we've arrived and our troubles are over from a racial standpoint. So we did. We elected him, and then we elected him for a second term. So what happened? Well, all the race hustlers out there, all the Al Sharptons and Jesse Jacksons, and then the news that foment these stories, they had to up their game because we were staring at a two-term black president, and yet they make all their money crying racism all the time. So they went into overdrive. They stepped up their game big time. You noticed it stepped up. It wasn't, you can say, well, what did Obama do to quell this, or what did he do to help race relations? He didn't do anything. Everyone else stepped up their game because they had to, because how could we live in a racist nation when we elect a black president for 2 terms?
Right. And then they had to find the villain. And the villain is the cop. They found the cop. And that's what happened. But I want to get into one more thing before I let you go.
The cop represents the man, and they don't like the patriarchy.
The cop represents the white supremacist power, okay? And they launched off that. Now, your buddy Jimmy Kimmel, and one of the reasons I like Carolla is because Carolla is a loyal guy, all right? And he's friends with Jimmy Kimmel. And Kimmel is getting killed because in the past, Kimmel did blackface skits, made fun of black basketball players, that kind of thing. Now Kimmel is a pariah because he's caught up in this unbelievable McCarthyistic wave in Hollywood where everybody's going to get cleansed. But it's ironic. And I like Kimmel. The few times I've spoken with him, we've had a pretty good rapport. But he went so far anti-Trump that now he's got his left-wing buddies hating him, and the right wing doesn't like him either, and Kimmel's out there by himself. Am I wrong?
If out there by yourself means, rich
just
and
you,
living in a
Carolla.
mansion. I don't know. There are many people we should be concerned for in this country and abroad more than Jimmy Kimmel. He's the most.
I agree.
He's the most decent man I've ever met in my life. Everyone who meets him knows who he is. He has a very generous heart, and he's a great person. He was doing comedy. He wasn't doing blackface. He was doing Karl Malone and Oprah and Snoop Dogg. That's what comedians do, at least gifted ones. I'm not good enough. Thank God I wasn't good enough to do impersonations back then. Otherwise, there'd be a bunch of footage of me doing the same thing. So Jimmy Fallon, Jimmy Kimmel, these guys they're not part of the problem. That's the whole thing. There are many. You started this with your opening monologue. There are many people that are part of the problem. Jimmy Fallon, Jimmy Kimmel, not part of the problem. Move on, idiots.
Okay, I agree with that, but Colbert is part of the problem. And that's why the other two reacted that way. Because Colbert was nowhere in the ratings, no one watched him until he became a far-left fanatic. And they felt they had to follow. So I want everybody to pick up Carolla's book, I'm Your Emotional Support Animal. It's a very sensitive title. Navigating Our All-Woke, No Joke Culture. All right, Carolla, we'll talk again soon. Get on that. Stand up for your country. Get on that campaign for us out on the West Coast, okay?
Thanks, Bill.
Okay, let's get to the mail. First, I want to say thank you to Jimmy Kopp, Princeton, Texas. Jimmy sent us these pictures because he is helping us out with the Stand Up for Your Country campaign. Show Jimmy's truck. This is great. Where do you see this? Stand up. Way to go, Jimmy. Out there in Princeton, Texas. Now, that's a guy making a stand, right? I mean, some people even scared to put bumper stickers on their cars. Well, I might get keyed. Yeah, all right, I understand. But look at Jimmy. He made his whole car do his stand up for your country thing. Way to go, Jimmy. We really appreciate it. John Russell, Springfield, Missouri. Bill, you are correct that personal behavior is the cause of the spread of COVID. However, President Trump's point was that the numbers reported are higher in the USA compared to other countries because we provided more testing of the virus. But that doesn't matter. It's so insignificant, John. What matters is that people are afraid here in America. And the virus is vicious. People in Florida, Texas, Arizona, California, other states are suffering. That's the only thing that matters. Not testing, not this, not that. So we got to get this thing under control, and the way to do that is you can't go into clusters, as we've said and said and said and said. Teresa Chris, Jacksonville, Florida. I agree with you, Bill. In order for Donald Trump to win, he has to get the COVID pandemic under control. However, I think he also has to show the voters that he has the racial unrest, property destruction under control. Not as important as COVID, because Americans don't blame Donald Trump for the Black Lives Matter Global Foundation or the anarchists in Portland, Oregon, Antifa. They don't blame him for that. All right. And the Democrats, they could try to blame him, but it's crazy. All right. They can't. So the president's going to run on law and order. That's a smart move. But the COVID thing is everything. Noah Emery, Hamilton, Ohio. The daily presidential tracking poll from Rasmussen shows the president 48% job approval. Pretty strong considering the pandemic and government-forced economic shutdown. I can't find methodology for Rasmussen, but if it's even close to the truth, how can this poll be so different than the other? Because a daily tracking poll is just done by phone and internet. It's like bing, 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 bing. Okay. Rasmussen was right in 2016, the only polling agency. So I give Rasmussen credibility, but it fluctuates. It's up, down, in, out. Tony Padgett, Chandler, Arizona. Bill, you said there is economic privilege in the U.S., yet isn't having to pay bail when you are poor, proving your point. A poor person cannot afford bail and thus stays in jail, while a rich person can easily afford it for the same crime and gets out of jail until trial. All right, let me break this to you. crime and punishment cannot be based on what you have in the bank. There's a bail system. The system is there to make sure that you show up for your trial, your hearings, and to protect other Americans from you if you're violent. Just because you're poor doesn't disqualify the bail. That's insane. Now, the unfairness in the system is there. If you're poor, you're much more likely to go to prison than somebody who can afford good lawyers. That's true. But you can't change the system and allow crimes because of that. Because if you do that, people will get hurt. Sebastian Manguilo, Coral Springs, Florida. Bill, I didn't know about the Sedition Act until you spoke about it. I know it may sound a little harsh, but I would love for the government to have that act today. No, you wouldn't, Sebastian. That gives entirely too much power to the federal government in Washington. If they can boot you out of the country because you criticize them, no, you don't want that. Jessica, concierge member. Thank you, Jessica, very much. My husband and I have been Oregonians for our whole lives, and thank you for your coverage of what's happening in Portland. We are not in Multnomah County, thankfully, and there are so many who oppose what's happening in Portland. We both believe there is a silent majority in our state will continue standing up for our country. You're right. Multnomah County has most of the population, but everything else outside of Salem and Eugene is fairly traditional in Oregon. But Portland is a wreck, an absolute wreck. Don Chase, Mount Pleasant, Utah. I received my 15 stand-up stickers. I've already given them out to family and friends. I just ordered more. You're a patriot, Don. Appreciate it. Len Wallet, Rancho Mission Viejo, California, just received 35 stickers. I've mailed 30 of them to fellow patriots. Hey, you guys, I appreciate it. Go crazy, all right? Stickers everywhere. Don't be odious when writing to us. Crazy Horse comes out September 8th. Pre-order, please. Back in a moment. Quick final thought. Sports opens up. I said in the NFL part of the program, it's going to be a disaster for that league, but this is good. It gives us a diversion. Even though there's no fans, it's good. I'm not going to watch the basketball. Too radical for me. Baseball, maybe. Football, much less. Hockey, go Islanders. Going to watch hockey. And I'm glad sports is coming back. We need the relief. See you tomorrow.